Hello and welcome to the DIMP Digital Podcast. I'm your host Joe Appleyard and we are continuing our assault on the greatest games of all time. This is part 2 of 3 and I'm once again joined by Pac-Man himself, Tom Adcock. Tom, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yes, very well, thank you. The last time we went through our best of the rest for handhelds, PCs, home computers and some of the older consoles as well. And we also went through the third generation, which was the Sega Master System and Nintendo Entertainment System. This week we will be going to go through the 4th and 5th generations. As per our regulations, we'll be picking our top 3 games from each generation, then blasting through our honourable mentions. We have also enforced the rule where we can only pick one game per franchise throughout the entire process, so keep that in mind. Spoilers may be ahead, so I suggest you switch off if you don't want to get stung by that. But let's crack on, mate. Much like the third generation that we've just come out of, I think it's fair to say that it's Sega and Nintendo again, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so in the 4th generation, they're the main contenders. Glancing at our list, I can't see any games from any other consoles. 1990, the Mega Drive.
There was a lot of other consoles knocking. I think more than ever, potentially. There was more consoles knocking about here, or I don't know, here or the next one. But unless you had like thousands in your bank and had a Neo Geo, I don't think anyone was actually playing any of the other games or consoles. So yeah, I think they're the big boys.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, look at the list. We've only got Mega Drive and SNES games there, so I think we were pretty much safe in covering that off and just sort of binning the other consoles. They never really made an impact. 1990 is when the Mega Drive arrives over here in Europe, so the Sega Mega Drive, or the Sega Genesis as it was known in the States. I always thought it was a bit weird to do, they had a different name, but it's to do with the naming conventions and rights. There's a bit of a problem there. And it wasn't until 1992 that we get the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, aka the SNES. So they're playing catch up here on Sega. 2 years is quite a long time. I had the Mega Drive. I say I had it, like, it was actually my brother's, but I got to spend a lot of time on there. Piper down the road, he had a Mega Drive too, so I'd go around there and we'd play that. I did have access to another SNES, a mate of mine called Stubbs. He was also about 5 minutes around the corner, so I had a crack on that whilst I was over there, so I had access to that as well, and I used to spend a lot of time over there. What about you, Mr. Adcock? My assumption is it was the SNES.
Yes, I think I had the Mega Drive first though.
Oh right, so you had both.
Yeah, I had both, but the SNES was the big deal. I think, because at that time, I must have known they were the same sort of generation level. But I knew the Mega Drive had a big lead on it. I remember, for sure, like people playing the Mega Drive when I was still on my NES. And then, got hold of a second-hand Mega Drive with Sonic, maybe. I don't know, a couple of other great games. So had both.
Yeah, I mean, we briefly touched on the rivalry between Sega and Nintendo in the third generation. Now, at this stage, I'm too young to know what's going on. I'm a complete passenger. But I've gone back and seen the famous adverts from Sega, the one where it says the Mega Drive does what Nintendo don't. And there's another one mentioning that it's got blast processing. And if you've not seen any of these adverts, go back and find them on YouTube. They are fantastic. But Did this stir up things between them two and also the respective sort of fans and fanboys? Because seeing adverts like this taking a massive dig directly at Nintendo must have been a bit disheartening for some fans. I imagine they got the right ump.
I'm not sure if it was as blatant here in the UK as it was in the States, but sure. Yeah, I mean, this is because I was in secondary school now, so you had it was a big divide between Sega and Nintendo fans, and this is the first time where I guess Nintendo might have got earmarked as being for kids, because I don't know if you remember, they had the green blood in Mortal Kombat costume, and then like Sonic was meant to be all like fast and dangerous compared to Mario being fast and fat. I don't know, but so that was the first step on them to being in a family console, I guess. Yeah,
I mean, you mentioned last week that you got into a row with a couple of kids in Keddies over the SNES and Mega Drive. How did that even happen? Do you remember much about this? Was it just you both look at the consoles or the games, or I mean, there's obviously.
I think it was the classic thing where two guys were sort of just they were talking. I was with my mate, and there was two kids.
Sorry, how
there,
old are you at this point, roughly? So you in secondary
14,
school? Right?
yeah,
so old
too old.
Better.
Yeah. So they were sort of standing there talking about like picking up games and just saying, I think they might have picked up a SNES game and gone, look how shit the graphics are or something. And then my mate sort of pipes up and went, well, it's mode 7 on that, mate. You don't know what you're talking about. And it just started like a massive argument. It's like, what is this?
Oh,
but yeah, it was constant. Cause I think, you kind of pestered your parents to buy you a console, shelling out a load of money, and then you did sort of feel like you had to defend it. It was like a new family member.
Yeah.
So you was like, right, if anyone slags this off, I'm taking them down.
You had both though. So was you still like a Nintendo boy though at heart? Was that still sort of in your blood
I think
almost?
because this is what I'm saying like earlier, trying to get across is that because the Mega Drive had that massive lead time, I almost felt like to me
Underdog.
Well, no, but I felt like the SNES then was maybe like 16.5 bit. Like to me, it was
okay,
always
so they
a
spent
little
more time developing it, and it's probably going to be better because it's come out later.
Yeah, like I've gone back like you have and watched videos, and I think like the Xbox and PlayStation now, you can pick different bits out. They were essentially the same. I think maybe the Mega Drive might have run things a bit faster. The Nintendo had more colours or whatever. So, there's different bits. They kind of basically broke even. But to me, I don't know. I think some of the games, you kind of got those arcade quality games on the SNES this time. Yeah. And like some of the cross consoles, I always felt like the SNES probably had the edge for me.
It didn't have blast processing though, did it? It's missing.
Clearly not, mate. No, that's true.
I mean, speaking of blast processing, they said it allowed a lot more faster sort of sprites to appear on the screen. And one of the faster games on the Sega Mega Drive, I mean, we're going to make a start now on our fourth generation top 3 games list. We've both got this one on there. It's one of Sega's most loved franchises that's ever come out. And I mentioned last time that maybe Wonder Boy or Alex the Kid were Sega's attempt to try and dethrone Mario. And although they were pretty decent efforts, it really was Sonic the Hedgehog that really took the fight to Nintendo and the Mario series. We've both put down Sonic the Hedgehog 2 as one of our top 3 games. You're pretty much, as you said, sort of thinking in the Nintendo camp. So how has Sonic 2 made it onto this list? I mean, you obviously had access to the Mega Drive, but it must have been a pretty big deal to get that in there.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, although I'm a Nintendo fanboy, I think I've pretty much had access to almost every other console, really, apart from PlayStation 3. So I'm quite happy to play other games, and I think you've got to take your hat off to Sega here. They, went after Nintendo. They created this little character, and they made an absolute gem of a platformer.
So at the time, would you give Sonic the credit for this, or was you scoffing at it, or was you like, actually, this is
no, I loved it, mate. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, totally.
So your little Nintendo mates like, oh, traitor. God,
yeah, but I feel like by this time, Mario was almost a bit of a back burner. 14 years old, he was already a bit uncool. So you're kind of like, right, going towards the beat 'em ups and the shoot 'em ups of the, there's a lot of that going on. They were the sort of core games to me. So this come along, I remember absolutely loving it. I think it came with a console. For me, and didn't really know anything about it, no reviews, no internet, stuck it in, and I was pretty much blown away by it. That was Sonic 1,
right,
and there was a lot of hype around the sequels, so I remember knowing that Sonic 2 was coming and sort of getting it, not on release but pretty soon after. And it's, I mean, if we're going to talk about that one, it is the superior one, I guess.
Yeah, I think it builds. The original was fantastic. I had that as well, but this really does build on the bare bones. Well, not the bare bones, the foundations that were there. And Sonic was all about speed. And one of the things that stood out in this one is that it actually felt a lot quicker than the original. Sonic was absolutely lightning in it. They introduced some new 3D bonus stages, which
remember that.
Yeah, nice change of pace. And I think one of the more overlooked things that it introduced was real-time 2-player co-op. So someone else could plug in the control, sit down beside you and play as Tails, and you're both on the same screen playing together. And I think it's a great touch, because I know on Super Mario World, which is probably what most people compared it to, you could take turns, couldn't you? But you could never have Mario and Luigi on the same screen.
Yeah, that was when I remember always thinking like any game that had like the simultaneous 2-player was a massive like bonus. Yeah. It just made all the difference really, because obviously you only ever had local co-op then, obviously. So like it was just being able to play the levels with a mate was a bonus. I remember on that though, it was good, but I don't know if you remember, they like Sonic was always the lead character, so he would control the. Yeah. So if he went ahead, Tails would then sort of have to just spin his tail, catch up, and you'd then carry on. But yeah, it was really decent touch.
Yeah, they had a competitive mode as well, and you could go head to head on 3 different levels, and I think there was one 3D level there, so you could have like a split screen, although it was a bit squashed. And
it was really squashed, yeah.
It looked a bit shitty, but you could do that, and it was all like a race against the clock. You had...
I suppose it's just jam-packing it with features, isn't it? And everything that Nintendo didn't have then, I guess.
Yeah, you had Dr. Robotnik still being Sonic's sort of main enemy as such, and he's hell-bent on taking the world over with robots. And what I loved about the Sonic series, and it's not specific to Sonic 2, but the series in general, was that I like the whole collecting the rings to give you health. So as long as you had at least one ring, you could sort of jump on a spike and get away with it, whereas... You know, in Mario, obviously, you could go larger or smaller. Once you were smaller, you were done for. And it's like the idea of being able to collect rings to sort of give you a little buffer instead of making a mistake and dying straight away. Offered a little bit of a different dynamic.
Yeah, it's a nice touch, that. I used to hate it when you was underwater. Remember, you had to collect those little air bubbles, and there used to be those like platforms that would move in and out. And if you fucked your jump up, you'd drop all the way down to the bottom, and you knew you had no chance of getting up before that air ran out. The little music would get faster, and he'd start breathing all weird.
Yeah,
that last bubble would come out. You'd be like, "Shit,
that's it.
100 coins ain't saving me now."
No, that's it. It was a great game. It really took the fight to Super Mario, and I think it was a worthy adversary, wasn't it?
Yeah, quick side note: did you ever play Sonic 3?
What, with Knuckles?
Yeah.
I did. I played it round. I think Piper had it, and I think by then the Mega Drive had been sold for me, and I was on the Amiga. But yeah, I went round there and played it, and I was like, oh, you can climb up walls with Knuckles. But looking back, it wasn't on the same sort of level, I don't think.
Yeah, I remember playing it, probably borrowing it, and I remember you could plug in another cartridge to it or something.
Yeah.
But I really feel like by Sonic 2, probably because of overplaying it, I'd had my fill of Sonic then. I was like, right, that's enough. Not much new here, and it was probably a fairly quality title, but
no, it certainly was, and the trouble is, it's probably one of the most important games that Sega had, because they spawned a massive franchise off it, and it sickens me nowadays that a kid, you know, maybe when we were sort of going back to say if he's 6 or 7, he'll pick up a modern Sonic game these days, and it's going to be terrible. And their first impression of Sonic is going to be that shit. And they're unlikely to ever know how awesome Sonic actually used to be.
Yeah, it's funny that they kind of went down the path. Because Sega, I guess, are still a pretty good publisher, developer, whatever they are now.
Yeah, they publish as well, but yeah, they do develop.
They've just ballsed it up, haven't they, with him? Like, they just don't really know what to do. It's all kind of... He's never transitioned into 3D well, really.
No.
I mean, he had a couple of handheld games, like on the Game Boy Advance and stuff, that were pretty reasonable, but that's it. They've just got worse and worse from what I know.
Yeah, back in the day though, he was a legend. I had a Sonic toy that I used to have, so he had a Sonic program, anything Sonic. I was all over it.
It's lunchboxes, TV show,
big blue hedgehog, awesome game. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is one of ours on the list, and once again, I must reiterate, it doesn't mean it's the top of the list. We're just going for these in a random order, so there is no sort of best game. So another top 3 game that we've both put on our list, so sort of a mutual top 3 game, I guess what you could consider it, is Mario Kart on the SNES. And before you all get your pitchforks out and go, oh, Tom's already said Super Mario Bros. 3 for the NES, you can't use it, it's the same franchise. Well, it ain't. Mario Kart is a completely different genre, let alone franchise, and it's not related to Super Mario Bros. In any way. All it does is borrow from the same characters. Different game, different franchise as far as I'm concerned. So as I said, you're not going to get us on that. But Mario Kart, what a game. It's one of the first games that I had great fun having sort of competitive play against a mate with. It really worked well with a split screen or taking turns, you know, trying to beat each other's times.
Yeah, it was fantastic, mate. There was only the 2 players on that one again. I think they kind of made it more as they went on, but it's all you needed. I think that's to do with the tellies, though, isn't it? Because you think back in the day how small the tellies were. Imagine cramming 4... Insane. Well, yeah, I think the tellies were a lot smaller. I used to have a tiny telly. Yeah.
So you imagine getting 4 people on that. It would have been worse.
Yeah, you'd proper struggle. Yeah, and going back to like how, you know, Sega's Sonic was, you know, it was split screen, but squash. This looked perfect. Yeah, spot on it was. 8 players, like all the classic ones were there.
Yeah.
It was really good. It was just pure fun. It wasn't serious in any way, it the controls were tight. The courses were brilliantly designed. There were shortcuts and things to find out. If you wanted to be risky, you could try and take a jump and overtake people.
Get a little feather and try and jump over a gap on the old ghost level with the old planks and stuff. I remember.
Do you remember that last turn left out? Yeah. It's deadly. It would cut that out. Yeah. But all the the special objects were just brilliantly crafted. Infuriating. Like someone got lightning or red shells or something that would fuck you off last minute. Nothing worse. But then the joy of a room full of your mates and just seeing someone whiz past from fifth to first on the last straight. Yeah, I mean, it's such a good feeling.
Yeah, one of my best memories has to do with that. I mean, I was playing with one of my mates' older brothers in sort of a bog standard championship, and he's out of the championship runnings. He's had a bit of a nightmare. I don't know what he was playing at, but it comes into the final race and I've got a shot at winning as long as I finish sort of second or above. Nightmare start. I'm struggling to regain ground. Just having a horrible time. Lightning's hit me. I've been run over. All sorts of shit. Gets to the last lap and I'm fifth, and I hold that sort of position to the final corner. And for once, I'd actually saved a mushroom, which I usually use straight away. And I use it on the final straight. Power through into second just before crossing the line. Jubilation in the room. Just for those few seconds, I felt like an absolute hero. I think it's little moments like that encapsulate sort of the Mario Kart experience. You get those moments of joy and entertainment in absolute bundles with Mario Kart, especially on this particular SNES version.
The balance is perfect as well, because it doesn't feel cheap. No. It's tactical to be in third on that last lap and to know that that's where you want to be, because you're going to get a top or second tier item. You're like, right, this is exactly what I want. These mugs up front think they're sort of bossing it, and then you just power up with that.
It's brilliant. If this a question for you, if this was just Super Nintendo Kart, as in without the Mario characters, do you think it would have been as big a hit as it was, or do you think the interest come from having the Mario Kart characters, and then when they played it they went, oh bloody hell, this is actually a good game?
It's a great shout. No idea, mate.
I mean, would you have been interested still? I mean, it wouldn't have got as much press, I wouldn't have thought.
No, but I suppose that's early days for them, isn't it, when they start using their characters.
It's new, isn't it?
Yeah, and the characters aren't that old. It's not like they're appealing to anyone's childhood then. It's most of those characters have only had 2 or 3 games themselves. So they could have kind of done it with anyone, but I guess those sort of toony characters in a sort of fun kart game just probably made sense. Yeah. Rather than create 8 new characters or generic racers. But that is a great thing. But it must have helped sell the game. But then if it's going to be shit, no one's going to play it regardless of who's in it, I guess.
Well, like you said though, back in the day, there was no internet and that. Maybe just having characters on the front helped people just buy the box, because there wasn't a lot of sort of literature out there to get your sort of gaming sort of
no, exactly.
So something like that probably would definitely work back in the day.
Unless you had your monthly magazine, and even then they must have been biased. Nintendo magazine, Christ, everything getting 95. Right, it's a bit iffy here.
It's still got great gameplay. I said all the power ups, the ability to throw shells, bananas.
Balance of the characters as well. I mean, I think you only had the 3 kind of tiers then. You had the Mario, Luigi, I think were kind of the box standards, bit of speed, pick up speed quick, nice weight.
Sort of balance, weren't there, those two? They were
the big boys, didn't you? Bowser and Donkey Kong. I never played as them. They were too slow to get going. I never realised they were top end and fastest.
Nah, I used to never play with them because, like you said, off the grid they were pathetic.
Who were you?
That's what I was going to ask you, but I was normally Luigi, just because for whatever reason I liked him. Sometimes Mario, although I think he got a bit too much credit, but Luigi was probably my favourite. So it's because someone said once when I was younger, they went, "Oh, Luigi's got no backspin, so you can't spin out on corners." It's a massive lie because you could, but that sort of got burnt into my brain, and I was like, "Yeah, I can't get spun out using Luigi." Pathetic lies, and I believed it for years until obviously realised when I got older, I thought, actually, I spun out plenty of times while just not hopping. But yeah, Luigi was probably my favourite one. What about you?
Toad.
Quick,
yeah. No, mate. Weirdly, I'd never pick him now, I don't think. But yeah, I just liked him. He was nippy and preferred him over that little Cooper shell thing. So I was livid if someone got him first. I was like, right, I'm not playing.
No, because you had to be separate ones, didn't you? Someone got in there, that was it. You couldn't just have a copy of them in a different.
No, I think it'd be Mario as a second person, but I was never happy.
No, I didn't realise till recently that collecting those coins actually increased your top speed. and it helps you sort of when you've been hit by another player. I don't know if you knew that back in the day, but I had no idea that this had an effect on sort of your control and your speed. I
forgot it,
oblivious.
But it does ring a bell because I think they've done that on one of the follow-ups, so one of the Game Boy ones, handheld ones. Yeah, they reintroduced that. It would like if you got hit, so many coins would fall out, and if you didn't have enough, you would then spin out. Yeah. So I do remember that. Yeah.
Superb game. It's just so addictive, and you look how successful that franchise has been. Fast forward into today's stands, what we're on Mario Kart 8 now?
Yeah, and there's been a hell of a lot of people have tried to topple that as well. I think everyone's had a go.
It spawned a massive new genre, didn't it, of kart racing, and Sega All-Stars, Diddy Kong Racing. There's all sorts of shit out there that it spawned off. And
isn't there Crash Bandicoot one as well?
Yeah, they had a little go at it, but nothing beats Super Mario Kart. It was the daddy, and it still is the daddy.
Yeah, it's true.
Genre. My final game is for the Mega Drive, is Streets of Rage 2.
Nice.
Now, I did mention in the last podcast that I had the original Streets of Rage on the Master System. It was a downport, so as you can imagine, when I saw Streets of Rage 2 on this brand spanking new Mega Drive, I was immediately blown away by how it looked. Console-wise, it was a Sega exclusive, but it was actually ported to the arcades after it had been on the console, so it was a bit of a weird way that Sega did it, but in terms of it being different from the first one, they made a few little changes. So that special attack that I think we spoke about offline before, the police would come in and fire rockets.
Yes.
They changed it in number 2, so each individual character had their own special moves, so they'd have certain things that they could do. It just worked a lot better, and it added sort of more depth to the characters. They expanded all the move lists to make them all unique, so if you played as Skate, who was one of the sort of smaller, quicker characters, it was a lot different to playing as Max, who was like this lumbering sort of pro wrestler.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
Because these would have been like for like swaps, because this was Sega's attempt to take out the Capcom exclusive to Nintendo Final Fight.
Right, yes.
Do you remember that? It's a good game as well. But yeah, this one, I think you know what? You were right. This is the better of the two, because that had a poor console port with didn't have the two players at the same time, was missing a level and missing a character. I think Streets of Rage, completely nailed it.
You had all your classic bosses in there. There was this person called Jet who could fly around on jetpacks. This monkey man bloke, I can't remember his name, but he was a massive pain in the arse. Big, massive wrestler. And you had Mr. X at the end of his little machine gun. Still think the soundtrack for this is incredible, and I think that gets overlooked in some games, but it really was a home run for this one. And as you touched on, the multiplayer feature was fucking brilliant.
And I think, to be fair, arguably, those side-scrolling beat-em-ups were probably the bread and butter of this generation.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, weren't there?
There was loads, and there's some real good ones. I mean, from Golden Axe probably started it all on Mega Drive. Then you had like Final Fight. I think Turtles in Time was a really good one.
Turtles in Time.
It was really good. And there was a Batman game as well. Batman Returns, I think, was really good. But yeah, this is probably the best of the bunch.
Yeah, I mean, I'd often go around Piper's house and we'd play for this together. His little dad would poke his head round the corner and look in the door. And bearing in mind, he'd never played the game whatsoever. He'd never had a chance. He'd never sat down and played it. But he's always sort of pop his head round, give us little advice how to beat certain characters. And the famous one was, there was a couple of kickboxers that turned up sort of the second third of the game or so, and he'd go, don't jump at them because they'll kick the shit out of. Well, he didn't say kick the shit out, they'll kick you. And Piper Senior was spot on. If you did jump at them, they would nail you. I had no idea how he got hold of this knowledge, but he was loving it. He was loving it, and I loved it. It's my defining sort of beat 'em up game, and so much so that I actually bought it again on Xbox Live Arcade for the Xbox 360 when I was playing that console. So I had to get it again, and it was still a joy to play through. But especially winding back the clock, fantastic game. 2-player, 1-player, it didn't matter. And again, another sort of game I managed to complete without cheating, so that gets another little tip. Did you play this much? Did you have access to it? Did you buy it? Or?
I had this. I had Streets of Rage 1 and 2. Don't think I had... Was there a third one? I think there was.
Yeah, there was a third one. I never played that.
Again, I sort of then had my fill by then. Maybe it was at the end of the sort of console life, probably.
Yeah, because it got a bit messy towards the end, didn't it? Especially with Sega. But yeah, I mean, I think that's quite an interesting trend that we've both sort of got the second of, Sonic and Streets of Rage, and then by the time the third one rolls around, it's sort of like, I've played that way too much. And I think that was just because there probably wasn't a great deal of volume of games out, so you've got your sort of three favourites that you just play constantly, and it doesn't matter how good a game is, you can burn yourself out of any game.
Yeah, and I think maybe with that kind of genre as well, like side scrollers, there's not much you can do with them, is there? Like, no. Probably why they've died out over the generations. There's just no way of evolving them as such. No. So, yeah, I think maybe by the third one it was kind of already past its heyday, but I had this and I loved it. Great game.
Streets of Rage 2, nailed on favourite. Mr. Adcock, your final game in this generation, the fourth generation, is Street Fighter 2 for the SNES. I assume you had that on?
Yes, mate. Yep.
It was always going to pop up somewhere along on someone's list, Street Fighter. There's been many different versions of this franchise, but just quickly, what makes Street Fighter 2 the standout sort of version for you? Mate,
Street Fighter probably defines that era for me. I remember going down the arcades there, which was, the main event back then. That was better than all the consoles, graphics, sound, everything.
Yeah.
The top games were in your local arcade. But then all of a sudden, you had Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter being ported to the home consoles.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a, Commodore 64 scaled down shitter. It was there. It was
the real McCoy.
It was spot on almost. It was amazing. The SNES pad was perfect for it 'cause it had 6 buttons, which was unheard of at the time. Mega Drive only had 3. Had to release a second pad for that.
Yep.
So it already felt like a boss going, right, I've sort of picked the main console, better graphics, got the pad ready.
Yeah.
And like the hype train for this was just massive, absolutely huge. Like everyone had been playing in the arcades for a couple of years, and then you get word that it's coming out on the SNES. This was in the era of grey Japanese imports and stuff, so everyone was importing games. Paying, mate, you think a PlayStation game now, 50 quid's a lot. People were paying, I think I paid 80 quid for this
to import this, and that was the big grey cartridge, was it? And you had to have a little extension on top of the SNES.
That's it. It was slightly mine was an American one, had a converter, and you put a UK game at the back.
Yeah.
So I had to buy the game and the converter. So I spent probably 120 quid on this game. It's ridiculous. And if I'm honest, I was a massive side scroller like Streets of Rage and Final Fight, like I spoke about, and that was the one. They came out roughly the same time, so that was my choice: Final Fight, Street Fighter. And I kind of went against my heart and went with the one the magazines were saying is better, because I love them both. I played them in the arcade, but I've always been a side scroller. I tell you what, mate, I'm so glad I chose it because Final Fight, as good as it is, there's 6 levels or whatever and you're done. Can't play 2-player. No. Street Fighter, although you've only got the 12 fighters, there's no
so
2 fighters ever.
It's
never going to be the same ever. And it just became an absolute beast of a game. Everyone at school had it. So all your friends were going, "Oh, who do you play as?" Or come around your house, we'll play. Sort of made friendships out of it based on
just
that game. Yeah, absolutely. And there was nothing better than going back down the arcades, knowing all the moves because you'd practiced, and sticking your 20p on the cabinet, waiting to get a game, and then actually winning a few games, getting a bit of credit off the local sort of ruffians. It's
So what happened to Street Fighter 1 then? Why is that overlooked? I mean, did it ever come to the consoles? I can't even remember now. I mean, obviously it was an arcade.
Yeah, I remember it. Well, I remember one shit shop having it. Street Fighter 1, it's appalling. So I think you've only got a choice of Ryu and Ken, and they're just a colour palette swap of each other, like Mario and Luigi were back in the day. I think there's about 5 fighters. You fight Sagat's your last boss. Yeah. And then you've got the joystick, classic arcade joystick, but then you also had just one big red button that was
did everything. You had to move and use the joystick.
You punched it, so that
impossible.
The harder you punch, the harder your hit was.
Context central buttons, even back then, not needed though, is it?
No, it was awful, absolutely awful. And I think that was kind of the joy of this game as well. How many times now do they release a sequel and it's and it's just the same thing, isn't it? A few more levels, stick another character in, pump up the graphics. To go from Street Fighter 1 and then to go, right, we can do this better, boys, and come out with that absolute game changer, Street Fighter 2. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I did play it, and I couldn't beat it. I didn't like playing really against anyone else because it was sort of like a fighting game. I sort of thought if I lose in this game, I'll probably lose in real life. So I sort of play on my own, massively cheat, just activate the 2-player or the second player, beat up all the guys so I got to the final boss, and then obviously I had to take on the final boss on my own. Handful of times managed to beat him. I was mainly using Blanca to get through that, and I remember him sort of crying, going, "Oh, mummy," or whatever it was at the end. And his little story had come to an end, and sometimes I was Ryu because of the Karate Kid, but you know, I did like it, but I never played it for what it should have been. That was a sort of a competitive, you know, fighting game at the end of the day. What sort of what's the difference between this and Mortal Kombat, and why does this one stick out massively more than what Mortal Kombat did at the time? Because from an outside looking in, because I said I didn't play this too much, it seems like Mortal Kombat was sort of like is a shock factor because of all the finishes and stuff, but the gameplay on Street Fighter 2 carried it like leaps and bounds in front of it.
Yeah, I think anyone in the know was Street Fighter based. Mortal Kombat, exactly what you said, you know, had the blood, had the finishers. I think it was probably was. I can't remember what other ones out off the top of my head in the arcades now, but it wasn't bad. It was the next best probably. Yeah. But yeah, the fatalities and then all the friendship things as the later ones went on, it was just all the novelty, wasn't it? I think people kind of saw through it. But I mean, to be fair to it, it's still bringing out new versions now. I think is a new one. Yeah,
it's Mortal Kombat X that's due to drop.
Actually, looks alright. I think
shortly. Does look okay. Heard rumours that there might be a Predator character as a special character. That sort of got to be in there, isn't it? Yeah,
that's good because Soul Calibur done that actually. Had a Link as a special character and Darth Maul, I think, like for the different consoles. It was pretty cool. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, they're still making Street Fighters now, and they're still highly regarded. And I don't know if any people who are new to the series would buy them, but there's enough fans out there to carry that for another 30 years probably. I mean, how many games can hold the popularity over this sort of time? It's probably not a lot, is there?
Not great.
Always good. Yeah, they're really good. They really take care of the franchise as well. It's always a lot of care and a lot. I mean, I know they do the sort of I can't think of the word, instrumental upgrades, like hyper fighting and turbo and stuff. Yeah. But the actual, we're only on from 2 to 4 now. So in 25 years or 20 years or something ridiculous. But it's
I mean, Street Fighter 2 got to be the classic, isn't it? It's where it all pretty much started, I'd say. So we discard Street Fighter 1 with Street Fighter 2. Everyone's heard of it, everyone's played it, and I think everyone that did play it properly definitely enjoyed it. That wraps up our sort of 4th generation top games there. We've got some honourable mentions. I'll just quickly reel off some of mine. So I've got The Lost Vikings, Road Rash 2, again another sequel, sort of generation of sequels it seems. Super Mario World, which I
classic,
yeah, great game. I thought you might have that over the Super Mario Bros 3 last time, but you went for Bros 3, but Super Mario World for me, I love that. NHL Hockey, bit of a strange one, but for some reason I was really into NHL when I was younger, and that was a great game. Golden Axe, Echo the Dolphin, and who can forget NBA Jam?
Oh, classic, mate. Great shout.
That was a great game.
Yeah, I've not got a great deal, but I've got Link to the Past, obviously. Great game. Secret Mana, we spoke about that offline tonight. I don't know if you managed to have a look at it, but Livid, I never got that completed.
That is pathetic.
Yeah, Star Fox.
Yep.
Remember that? Good, great game.
Yes.
I'd say Metroid was a massive game. I never actually played it. Always annoys me that. Super Metroid. Can't really have it in there, but people do rate that very highly.
It's got to mention at least, isn't
it? Yeah, Donkey Kong as well. Do you remember that? Where they sort of powered up the extra graphics. Great game. And Little One Flashback. I don't know if you know that one. Great little game.
Excellent. So, just before we move into the 5th generation, this is where Sega go a little bit mental, don't they? Their add-ons for the Mega Drive or the Genesis, whatever you want to call it, Mega Drive. We're sticking with Mega Drive. They sort of introduce a CD drive, don't they, and a 32X, and you end up plugging all these bits of shit onto the Mega Drive to make it play different games. And it must have been massively confusing for a consumer at the time, looking for upgrading or getting a new console, and they're adding all this shit onto it.
I think this is exactly right. This is exactly what cost them as far as I'm concerned anyway. I think I don't know what the span is, but you had Sega CD.
Yeah.
You had the Saturn and was there a 32X as well? Were they two different things?
So the Saturn was the next console they did, but the 32X they had on the Mega Drive. So, but this was all very close to the release of the Saturn, and this is where,
so you've got
they
like
sort of
three consoles in probably 6 years or something ridiculous.
Yeah, it's mental, isn't it?
Considering the hold they had in Europe.
Yeah,
like talk about balls it up. It's unbelievable, really, because I know like Nintendo were the big dogs worldwide, especially like in America and Japan.
Yeah,
but Sega had Europe sewn up, absolutely sewn up.
Now they go and do all this, and people go, "What is going on here?" And we eventually get to the fifth generation, and what happens in the lead up to this generation will, it's probably going to go down as one of the most important moments in video game history. I think it's fair to say that although Sega put up a decent fight against Nintendo were the kings of the home console, really. They outsold their rivals worldwide, and I think many believe, barring a few exceptions, they probably had the better game library pound for pound. And with Sega doing their little 32X and CD add-ons, that did not help their cause. But Nintendo throw a little bit of a wobbly, don't they? I know you've got a little sort of prequel story to what happens with Nintendo and their CD-ROM sort of venture with Panasonic. Just expand on what happened there, then I'll go in sort of the next stage of that.
Yeah, so I think Nintendo were in collaboration with Panasonic to create a CD drive for the SNES.
Yeah.
They were quite, happily going along with that. And then as far as I know, at I think one of the big conferences in the States or maybe Japan, Nintendo just announced before telling before telling like the guys at Panasonic. I think there's people from Panasonic there, like ready to kind of talk about the deal. Like some guy from Nintendo comes on and goes, "Yeah, that's off that." Sort of dumped them like publicly.
Yeah.
And then because of this, part of the sort of breakup deal, like they're getting divorced, Nintendo had to give Panasonic rights to some of their like biggest franchises. Yeah. So if you're an owner of the Panasonic console,
Jesus,
I can't think what it's called. Panasonic, I've no idea, but they had a console out. Yeah. It looks like a big sort of VHS player.
Like
you can find 2 classic Zeldas on it.
Jesus Christ.
Made back to back within it. I think they had like 10 months to complete the games. I can't remember both their names. One were called the Winds of Gamelon, but these are 2 of the worst of any kind of games you'll ever see.
Let alone a Zelda.
I've never played them, but I've seen them on the internet. They're atrocious. The graphics are good.
But that doesn't bail them out, does it?
No, fucking awful, mate. Yeah, so they come about because of that.
So Nintendo go away and do that, and then they actually end up working with Sony to again produce a CD-based add-on for maybe at the SNES, or perhaps looking at a standalone console in future with a CD-ROM drive in, and Sony were going to help them manufacture and build that. But for whatever reason, there were various fallings out, and Nintendo decided to scrap the idea and drop Sony again. So that's 2 people they've dropped. Sony go away and they strike up a very brief relationship with Sega. That quickly dissolves. And sort of thinking on their feet, Sony go lone wolf and produce the now famous PlayStation, and that went on to dominate the 5th generation, totting up over 100 million units sold for worldwide to the PlayStation. As I said, it smashed the records at the time, and Nintendo inadvertently created a monster in PlayStation, even nowadays, who are sort of cannibalising a lot of their sales. Looking back at this, I mean, again, I'm still a passenger at this stage in my age. Was there any rumours of this sort of unrest or this CD-ROM console circulating back in the day, or did it slowly build up after Sony went sort of lone wolf and started marketing it?
Someone at Nintendo definitely lost their job for that, didn't they? Fuck me.
It's caused. Just look now, and you think, bloody, how have they done that? PlayStation comes out of Nintendo dropping Sony. That is.
Funnily enough, I remember seeing this in a magazine, like one of my like regular little monthly magazines, Mean Machines, I think it was called, decent publication. But I remember seeing the picture of like the SNES with the Sony unit underneath it, and it looked. I think it was just an artist's conceptual picture. It looked beautiful though. I remember I kept that magazine because I remember thinking that looks the tits. I want that. And then I think I remember a couple of issues later them saying, "Oh, that's off. They're just going to push ahead now with the new console." Like I think it was called the Ultra 64 at the time or something.
Yeah.
But it was miles in the future, and they were just like, yeah, we'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
So no, there wasn't really any rumblings. And then I just remember, I can't really remember the PlayStation launch. I was in senior school by then, obviously. And I remember, like, you know, Destruction Derby and some of those early games getting released, and thinking, right, this is clearly a step up. This is the big boy game.
And that's what happened. I mean, all you had for the last few years was Sega and Nintendo, didn't you? And then Sony come along and somehow gain, you know, consumer trust. Sega start losing it. And one of I'm doing my research, it suggests that the PlayStation was a lot easier to develop for, and actually got massive sort of third-party support, which if you fast forward to today's standards, that sounds very familiar in terms of the Wii U and its third-party support. But the timeline goes for this particular console generation is the Atari Jaguar comes out November 1994.
Yeah.
In these areas. Sega Saturn comes out July 1995. PlayStation comes out September 1995. N64 March 1997.
Jesus, they've cost themselves again there, haven't they?
Yeah, and they stick to cartridges.
Yes.
Everyone else has adopted, you know, CD-ROMs, but you know the writing's on the wall there in terms of unit sales, and you know Sony get a massive head start. And to be honest, they sort of choke the life out of the generation and piss it really. What consoles did you have? Did you end up having, obviously not the Atari, I don't think anyone had one of them, but the Saturn, or was it just the PlayStation? Or I know you had an N64.
Yeah, so I had PlayStation and N64. I think I got the I don't know, I can't remember which I had first. If it's that big a gap, I'm pretty sure I got the PlayStation first.
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, at one point, I was very close to getting an Atari Jaguar. I sort of got the Argos catalogue, and I remember opening the Argos catalogue, and it just had the Atari Jaguar on one page and the PlayStation on another, and I opened it up, and all I saw was the world's first 64-bit console on the Atari Jaguar. So to me, as a kid, that's golden.
That's a selling point.
It's double what PlayStation had. It was cheaper, and you know, in the end, I ended up with the Amiga 500 for a few
Atari
years.
As well, trusted name in the entertainment industry.
Making a comeback, but I didn't go for it in the end for whatever reason. I ended up with an Amiga 500 to fill the gap until the PlayStation came down in price, which I must say, as you mentioned on the last show, some great games on that. But I was very close to making one of the biggest mistakes of my life, and we haven't really spoken about bits, but despite not knowing what they meant as a kid, in my head that was a big thing, having 64
it's the main
bits.
deal,
That's the classic argument though, wasn't it? Well, my console's got more bits than this one. It's mental really. None of us knew what it really meant.
Nah.
That's the word, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
As I said, we have no idea what Sega were doing. They lost out here. PlayStation steamrolled everyone, and confidence in Sega was shot during this generation. They only launched with 6 games, which probably, thinking back, cost them. There's about 35 add-ons being produced for the Mega Drive, confusing people, and you know people aren't going to take the plunge for that. But despite there being 4 consoles to choose from, we have only got games from 2, and no surprise, it's the PlayStation and the N64. I'm going to start with my top 3 games, or my top game, one of my top games. And it's going to be Metal Gear Solid for the PlayStation. Now, only because I've done a 3-part special on the entire series with Alex. If you haven't listened to them, go back to. But I've harped on for about 20 minutes just on MGS. I won't regurgitate everything that I have said too much, but it truly was a brilliant game. The gameplay, the story, the amount of Easter eggs that are in the game, bosses, cutscenes, voice acting, and presentation of Metal Gear Solid changed my opinion on what a video game could be, and it raised the bar in terms of what a pinnacle game should be. It showed me that video games could be as good as films and television in terms of how they actually tell a story, and for those reasons alone, it is in my top games for the PlayStation. Stunned silence from Mr. Adcock.
Literally wiped me out there, mate. To be fair, yeah, that was a great selling track. To be honest, mate, it annoys me because I feel like, although I had the PlayStation, I was very much Pro Evo based with it, which
right.
And I've missed this absolute, as you say, stunning franchise. Completely gone over my head.
Yeah,
and I've listened to that retrospective, and it fucking annoys me because I've probably going to go back and go, right, out of date, annoying, but I know I've missed something pretty special here.
It was special, and I said I won't harp onto it too much because it's got a whole half an episode dedicated to Metal Gear Solid, but great game, raised the bar and changed my perception on what a video game could be. Let's move on to one of your big hitters, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Now, I've recently played this for the first time, shockingly enough, on the Nintendo 3DS. But I'm going to keep my opinions to myself here because we are looking at these games from a perspective of playing them during the time that they were created. So me piping up isn't going to fall in line with that. Tom, just quickly, what's your history of Zelda up until this point? I assume you've played the previous games before it.
Yeah, I remember originally on the NES seeing the cartridges. For some reason, it's sort of they knew they were going to be special. All Nintendo NES games come on a grey bog standard cartridge. For some reason, they made it gold. Yeah. Instantly, it's like, right, this looks legendary. I remember playing that first one, not really getting on with it. Second one, seeing that as well, like side scrolling, a bit shoddy. It was the third one, one prior to this. My friend showed me, and I fell in love with it. It was amazing, and it's probably a toss up between those two to go on this list. So that's Link to the Past, the sort of 2D over the head for you, and then this was when it jumped into 3D. But I think that jump at the time was just absolutely fantastic. It'd been a massive wait. I can't really remember how long, but 7 years between those two games rings a bell. So the hype train's getting huge. All the magazines are sort of talking about it. It's pretty much my favourite game up until that point, I would say. Link to the Past. So I'm like literally on tenterhooks waiting for this thing to come out, and then the scores come out, and like everyone's rating. It's I can't remember how quick. I guess the scores came out a bit earlier then because it was magazine based, but whatever, they were huge. And like there's magazines in Japan that are famously tight with scores, and they're giving it like the first ever top marks, 40 out of 40. So I'm like, this is going to be amazing. Book myself 4 days off work, literally play it non-stop for 4 days. It's like, right.
Did you complete in those 4 days?
No, I didn't.
No,
I was just doing everything, mate. I think I spent a day fishing. I was like, this is like fantastic.
Well, yeah, I mean, introduce, the amount of different side quests you could do in this. I mean, for some reason, they've only started referring to the new Zelda as an open world, but this is an open world, isn't it? Basically, you go out and you explore and do what you like when you like.
Yeah, I feel like all Zeldas have been pretty much open world. I don't know. I mean, I guess like what's defined open world now, like your Skyrims and stuff, is kind of maybe. I suppose that's the next level from a Zelda open world. Now they're just
world, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah.
This is lots of different maps, but the sort of structure of it is an open world, and that you're left to pretty much to go off, and once you've done the sort of opening bit, you're left to go off and do whatever you like, basically. Yeah,
you can do pretty much anything. I think they strategically put blocks in your way so you can't get to a certain area at a certain time, but generally the map's yours to fuck around in and do whatever you want to, and there's loads of NPCs to interact with, and side quest games. There's everything there, and you got like I think 9. It's a huge game for the time. It's massive, like nine huge dungeons that are a couple of hours each minimum.
Wow,
you've got
sort of brain power. It's taken longer, but yeah.
Well, yeah, that will cost you. How long do they take? I mean, I can't remember. Is it more than that?
I reckon I'd say a couple of hours each. Yeah, if you. It depends. Like as I said, I don't want to talk about it too much because I'm in a completely different zone when it comes to playing this because I've had all these games before it. But they certainly were tricky, and they did take quite a bit of time, especially if you weren't sort of familiar with the Zelda ways. That was the biggest thing for me to try and pick up, was learning what to expect and do in a Zelda game. There's stuff that probably comes naturally to guys that have played this series before. Because I'd never played it before, I was probably struggling a little bit more, but the dungeons are great, aren't they? The amount of puzzles in there, and it does rack your brain sometimes.
I was going to say they're not, because like Nintendo, like being a sort of family kid-friendly console.
Well, it's not a kid's game. I don't know what kids doing that. Yeah,
you would struggle as a kid doing that for sure.
I remember talking to Mr. Hall about this. He had it at the time, and obviously he was my age, so he was a bit younger. He would have been sort of 10 or 11, maybe 12. And he said that they just used to wait for the Nintendo magazine to do the little walkthroughs every edition.
Jesus.
Just power that. It was the only way to get through some of the stuff. And back in the day, like I said, there was no internet, so just popping onto game FAQs was not an option.
Mate, they had the Nintendo hotline, 90p a minute. Get on that.
Did you ever have to phone it?
I think I did, and they couldn't work out what I was talking about. I think it might have been at Forest Temple, actually. I can't remember, but this geezer was just like, look, mate, I don't know.
You're not giving me enough context.
No, exactly.
What you're doing, so
he was like, he couldn't work out the last like main bit I did to work out what I needed to do next. So he was just baffled. Sort of sent me packing, and my dad got like an £11 extra bit on the bill.
I bet he loved that.
No one won out of that.
What's your highlight then from Ocarina of Time? Is there any quest or dungeon or puzzle that stands out in particular?
I think I liked everything, but the bosses were pretty amazing. You know, they all took up most of the screen, like a good portion of them. You know, and they're quite clever. You know, there's obviously like a pattern, but you know, I like the way you always have to use the weapon you found in the dungeon, and there's sometimes they ask you to kind of go a little bit above that and use one of the old ones, and there's some pretty good encounters. The last one particularly, I thought was pretty decent.
Yeah, very good, very good. I have to give them the due diligence for that one. Why this Zelda then? Because some people say Majora's Mask, others say this. I mean, is it just a preference thing, or do you think
I think
it splits people?
It's tough because there probably are. Well, there are for sure.
They're very different, aren't they?
Yeah, there's better Zeldas overall, but I think, you know, as we're doing this countdown, this had the biggest impact. It brought the series on in, you know, took it in leaps and strides they've never done since, and almost all of the new features are now mainstays. So
yes,
it has to pip. Yeah, Majora's Mask is good, and Twilight Princess is probably up there as well. So it'd be out of those three, but I'm happy with this one as my number one.
Superb. Let's move off on Ocarina of Time. Great game, no doubt about that. And our next two games are actually the same again. So we've got two mutual choices. First one, GoldenEye, and what a terrific first-person shooter this was. I mean, it was fantastic. I remember going around this chap's house for a birthday sleepover, and he had an N64 and he had GoldenEye on it. And I think I got a go on it at about 10 p.m. with about three others, and I didn't get off until 5:30 in the morning. I mean, I was next to useless on the game, but I just fell in love with it. The 4-player co-op for me was where it was at, especially if you put on remote or proximity mines. Facility, definitely my favourite map. And although I didn't have access to the N64, as soon as I realised this game was on it, I would constantly find ways to sort of get around my mates to play it. And to be fair, it was usually Pipers. I must have completed the single-player facility mission about 30 times over and over. It was my favourite single-player mission as well. But it was just straight out the book of the actual films, and it was so much in line with it. And although I'll probably get eaten alive by a sort of Bond purist, I think GoldenEye is my favourite James Bond film, and I can't deny that it's because of GoldenEye on the N64 that had this massive influence on my outlook on how Bond is.
I think a load of people would agree with you there. I mean, I probably would say the same thing, but anyone older than me would probably argue differently. But you should do another one of these. Don't know who you'd get in to do it, but maybe like game to film, you know, tie-ins, you know, best licensed game, because this is arguably the best. I mean, you've got all the set pieces from the game, the film. Yeah, they're all done so well. None of them are sort of feel shoehorned in. They're all perfect. You kind of go back and watch the film and be like, oh yeah, there's the facility, there's the dam. Oh, there he is, like saving Natalia or whatever.
There's the bloke on the toilet.
There's Bean running around, loving it, chasing you.
His face,
yeah.
So his little like superimposed face on
I used to love going up close to them. The graphics were terrible, really, weren't they? Yeah. At the time, they were fucking amazing, absolutely amazing. But yeah, I think it nailed it. Like, single player was immense, absolutely immense. Multiplayer was just. I know people who still play it now. I don't know what they're doing, but I'm not even joking. 4 mates, 4 pads, 4 rumble packs. Like you said, that was a night in, weren't it? It was fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, maybe bust out of the golden gun mode, or even just. I mean, you could turn big heads on, couldn't you? Just
big heads,
like
paint, all that stuff. Yeah, I think you make a good point earlier. Is that if Nintendo didn't have Rare making games for them this time, would that have been the end of them? I mean, because they did bring out this Perfect Dark, Banjo-Kazooies. Yeah. I mean, some of the biggest games that console had, like equal to anything Nintendo did. I reckon they would have struggled big time. Yeah. I don't know, even Xbox ended up purchasing the company, didn't they? And then sort of doing a Jimmy Hill with like Sky and just put them in the back room and never used them, but just kind of got rid of them. But yeah,
shame really. But 007 GoldenEye, I mean, as you said, probably the best movie time we've had, and it ties into the story of the film. It doesn't just go off on its own tangent. It all works, and campaign, multiplayer, all great, and everyone loved a bit of 007. So
arguably
GoldenEye
spawned first-person shooters. I mean, don't know when that one you were playing in the internet cafe was similar to. I suppose that would have been.
Yeah, I think.
It was internet, wasn't it? So it probably would have been after. I would have guessed.
Yeah, so that was that one. But I mean, probably I'd say multiplayer-wise, it's definitely local multiplayer, especially because obviously there was no internet. I mean, you could argue maybe Doom. The trouble is, it's just work now. But Doom was around, knocking around, and you had Quake, obviously, that I mentioned as well. But
for sure,
so console-wise,
didn't it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
sure, put it massively on the map, and GoldenEye James Bond and 007 is a massive franchise. So then to have a game based on it, people that probably wouldn't normally take notice and play video games, like you could quite perceivably see, like your dad going, "Oh, I'll have a little go at that." James Bond.
Absolutely.
People like that are gonna get involved with it, and it's to top it off. Fantastic mechanics, fantastic multiplayer. Can't really say a bad word about 007 GoldenEye. Our final game for the pair of us, and again it's a mutual choice. Again, it's an N64 exclusive. It's WWF No Mercy. Now, I had SmackDown because I had a PlayStation, and I was so fucking jealous of this, and I was completely stunned out of getting and being able to play WWF No Mercy for quite a while. But I had a friend, as usual, to get access to the N64, and I'll spend every other maybe weekend round his. He was called Dale, and I'd go around there, and he had an N64, and we would play the shit out of WWF No Mercy. I was such a big fan of wrestling at the time, and this just complemented my obsession perfectly. So was you like a wrestling fan at the time, or was this strictly just because of the gameplay?
Yeah, mate, I was a fair wrestling fan. I used to like the kind of older wrestlers, Hogan and Warrior and Ric Flair and whatnot from the 80s.
Steroids, come on.
I say they're older. They're still wrestling now, most of them.
They're still talking about.
But I've kind of gone off of it in terms of watching it by this time. But I still played the games. I can't think what the ones were before. There was definitely, I think, WrestleMania 2000.
Yeah, WrestleMania 2000, yeah.
Right, yeah, so I had that and loved it. But I remember knowing I was going to get this, and I remember getting it, and I was livid because I was going around my girlfriend's at the time for the weekend, and I couldn't play it, so I hid the game in a cupboard. My little brother found it, and him and all his mates played it and created all the wrestlers and kind of got better than me. So I was devastated when I come back on Sunday to that. But yeah,
that is not what you want, is it?
I did finally get it, and it improved in every way. On the not that WrestleMania 2000 was bad in any way, but this added like ladder matches. You could fight out the back. You could power slam people into the announcer's table.
It's fantastic. Gameplay was spot on, wasn't it? And yeah, I'll tell you what was a big upgrade was the customizable options that you had. So
practically unlimited, I think.
You could, as I said, you had backstage wrestling, and you used to have to do moves on the announcer's table. That was massive fan service. That was big at the time. Each wrestler had 4 different outfits. You could defend the what's it called, the championship in exhibition mode, and for people like me that used to like creating their own fantasy UFC, God almighty, fast forward in here, WWF cards, and then having like a sort of in running season. I loved all that. But yeah, the customization that you had for your created character was so in depth. You could actually design the actual movesets from the ground up, couldn't you?
Yeah.
That's something you couldn't do that before. You'd literally have to choose a wrestler's moveset, but this let you customise your finisher, your grappling, tie-up, all your punches. Everything was in there.
Yeah, everything customisable. I think you'd have options that weren't probably tied to any of the actual wrestlers.
No.
The ones you could select. You could literally build someone who just
completely unique.
Yeah, completely unique in every single way. It was amazing.
Your imagination of the perfect wrestler you could do. I mean, there's one bit you could add in there. You could choose how they reacted to getting cut and bleeding. Like, you could choose whether they could react aggressively or
That's
scared.
it, yeah.
Things like that. I'll tell you what was great as well, was the single-player story mode. I don't know if you ever had much of a go on that, but it was a very interesting take on what a typical career mode for a wrestling game is. And the fact was that you chose a championship and you followed that storyline, as it's called, and it would actually branch off on different paths depending on whether you won or lost in the ring.
I remember this because on the PlayStation 1, you would
You had to win everything.
Yeah, if you lost, you just replayed the match over and over. But this, you would lose and it would go off elsewhere.
It would change.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You don't even see that nowadays for wrestling games, and just having that's just such a small detail to have, just little branching paths. And I think to get 100% on all of the different belts, you had to play through them about 3 or 4 times to get all the different outcomes. But what a fantastic touch that is, especially for fan obsessed players that are probably, they were pulling a lot of these storylines out of the actual television storylines, so they must have felt right at home. I felt right at home playing it, and even for someone like yourself, a non-fan, using it for basically the gameplay experience, and you were loving it.
Yeah, well, I think it's a bit like GoldenEye, isn't it? You've got a real in-depth sort of single player. However you've experienced this game, you're having fun. You've got the single player is fantastic. Multiple playthroughs. If you get 3 or 4 mates around, you're gonna have great time with it. I don't think you have to like wrestling to like it. It's just a great competitive game. Yeah, the graphics are outstanding for the time. Yeah. I feel like it's probably a bit of a more controversial games we picked, but it deserves it, doesn't it? Without doubt.
Yeah, it definitely does. You had a plethora of people to select. There was so many wrestlers that were on the roster at the time that you could select, and like we said, there was nothing like this that had the sort of in-depth customization you could have for a character. Whatever you had in your imagination, you could pretty much create on the screen in front of you, and then go out and play as them, and they'll play in the style that you wanted.
I think another point is that there must have been, I don't know, a dozen wrestling games on each console, and the ones on the PlayStation weren't bad per se, but they just felt
they were arcadey. They were very
controls,
loose, and there was stuff like you'd do your finisher and they'll get straight back up, and I was like, right, that's when, as a fan, that'd really bother me. But No Mercy had it all nailed down, all the gameplay.
Mate, the controls and that were just so tight. It just felt right, didn't it? Like every character, every move, it just looked and felt exactly as it should do.
It felt like how you say nowadays that when you get like a good Nintendo made game where everything just works, this is one of them, and it wasn't even made by Nintendo, but it feels like it's had that sort of attention to detail and polish put on it.
Yeah, makes all the difference, mate, doesn't it?
Yeah, just the minor details and polishing up, it can make all the difference, you're right. So that's our top 3 games from the 5th generation, and let's look at the facts here, Tom. There is only one PlayStation game between us, so despite me rattling on about the PlayStation steamroller in terms of hardware sales, in terms of the software, 2 out of my 3 games are N64 games, and I didn't even have an N64. I had to ponce and steal off people, going around people's houses. Tells a little story there that, despite having all the hardware sales, that you can't beat a good bit of software.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily completely accurate, because for me, with PlayStation, I think I was very much ISS Pro Evolution Soccer, or whatever you called it at that stage in its evolution. But I had some great games on my PlayStation. Tomb Raider comes to mind.
1 and 2.
Yeah. Resident Evil 1, 2 and 3, all brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
What else was there? I didn't play it, but I know that Symphony of the Night, Castlevania was an absolute classic.
Sure. Yeah.
So I just feel like maybe I guess it was the sort of the multiplayer, the sort of early, you'd gone from having those sort of SNES and Mega Drive games where you got the odd bit of multiplayer to a real multiplayer experience with, Diddy Kong Racing, you've got wrestling, you've got GoldenEye, you've got football, you've got a bunch of games that you can get your mates around and just have a night in playing the computer and all enjoying it. And I think maybe they're the ones that kind of stick in your mind more, and you had the better time with. Which was just, a precursor to things to come, really, with online play.
Yeah. I mean, what are your sort of honourable mentions for your N64 then?
N64.
Perfect Dark or something?
Yeah, Perfect Dark, Majora's Mask.
Sure.
What else was there? There was Diddy Kong Racing was fantastic. Yep. Wave Race.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was 1080 Snowboarding, loved that.
Yeah.
I'm doing these off the top of my head. There's a ton of great games for that console.
Yeah.
Conker's Bad Fur Day, right at the end of the console's life, brilliant game.
Yeah.
Anything by Rare, essentially.
Just loving Rare.
Yeah.
Some of my honourable mentions, I've got Dino Crisis 1 and 2. Love
Excellent.
those. So Dino Crisis 2 I could play. That was sort of more action based. But Dino Crisis 1 I could not play. I was shit at it, but I still loved playing it. It was terrifying at the time. Still probably would be today. FIFA 98. sort of went completely against what I would essentially play now in a football game, but at the time, just having indoor football was fantastic. Tokka 2, love that. Thought that was a fantastic game. Destruction Derby 2, Gran Turismo 2, and the original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Fantastic, yeah.
Should also mention Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 as well. That's a great follow-up, and some would say it's better than the original, but both games, fantastic. But that's it. I think that's a wrap. For those of you that are listening, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and you can do through any decent podcast outlet. If you're watching, or should I say listening on YouTube, we don't have any video stream for this, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and please do leave us a comment. We've got new videos, content going out every few days or so make sure you check out and go into that. Me and Tom will be back in a couple of weeks to finish up in our final part of the greatest games of all time, and you'll be able to catch me, Logan and Hall next week for our regular video games podcast. But that's it for now. Game over. It's goodbye from Tom.
See you later, mate.
And it's goodbye from me, Joe Appleyard. Thanks for your time, and ta-da.
I've got a bit of a cough as well. Is that going to cost us?
Well, no, just don't cough in my ear hole.
Well, how am I going to get... Oh, hang on. So if I do this...
Yep.
Is that achievable? Is that
I mean,
bad?
I could hear it, but is there no like mute button on the headset?
On the Skype. Hang on.
Not on the Skype necessarily, but sometimes I don't want you doing that and then going...
Can you hear me? Did you hear what I said then?
Yeah. Oh, I can hear you now.
Hang on, so if I... Hang on.
That's gone. Can't hear you.
Yeah, but would I get away with that?
Yeah, you would, but what I don't want to happen is that you do that and then forget to turn it back on.
That?
I could hear that because you sort of cut it off too late, I think.
No, I didn't cut it off, that's why.
Oh.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll just do that, it's fine.
There's like a
fine.
But
yeah. Yeah, they'll just...
I mean, how often is this cough happening? That's one thing.
I'd say every minute.
Is it? Mate, I thought you don't get ill. You said on that first podcast,
but mate,
you've been ill since 1993.
Yes, but I said that, and I stand by it, because if this is probably HIV on someone else, it just manifests as a cold on me.
So... You're coughing every minute. That's not...
Put that in the podcast, that bit.